The emergency lights cast red shadows across the council chamber. Ambassador Thelnara stood before the transmission console, her translucent fingers trembling as she prepared to send another message. Outside the dome windows, she could see the night sky of her homeworld. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars she had loved since childhood, death was coming. The Krasvoth swarm had already consumed 3 outer colonies. Thelnara had watched the live feeds until the transmissions went dark. She had seen the black wave of creatures descending from space, covering everything like a living nightmare. The Villani who lived there never had a chance. They were peaceful people, artists and philosophers, beings who had never known violence. When the Krasvoth came, they did not know how to fight. They only knew how to die. Now the swarm was 6 days away from the homeworld. 6 days until 17 million monsters reached her people. 6 days until the Villani species became extinct. Thelnara took a deep breath, her gills fluttering with the motion. She had sent 47 distress signals across known space. 47 desperate pleas for help. She had contacted every major civilization, every military power, every species that might have the strength to save them. The responses had been disappointing. No, worse than disappointing. They had been cold. The first reply came from the Thorian Empire, the oldest and most powerful government in the galaxy. Thelnara had felt hope when she saw their seal appear on her screen. The Thorians had ships, armies, technology beyond imagination. Surely they would help. Archon Velmoth himself appeared in the hologram. He was tall and elegant, with pale skin that seemed to glow. His eyes were kind, but his words were not. "Ambassador Thelnara," he said softly, "we have reviewed your request. We understand your situation is dire. However, after careful analysis, we must decline to provide military assistance." Thelnara felt her heart sink. "But, Archon, my people will die, all of us. We have no weapons, no army. We need help." Velmoth nodded slowly. "We understand, but the Krasvoth are extremely dangerous. Our projections show that any intervention would cost thousands of Thorian lives. Our species did not evolve for warfare. A single injury can kill us from shock. The psychological trauma alone would damage our survivors permanently." He paused. "We cannot sacrifice our people for yours. I am sorry." The hologram flickered off, leaving Thelnara alone in the dark chamber. The next response came from the Crystalline Collective. Their representative was a being of living crystal, beautiful and ancient. Her voice chimed like music when she spoke. "We feel deep compassion for your plight," the collective said, "but we cannot help. Our bodies are fragile. We live for thousands of years, but we shatter easily. War is against our fundamental nature. We cannot destroy. It violates everything we are." The merged consciousness sent a text message. They were a telepathic species, millions of minds connected as one. Their message was brief. "Any combat deaths would create catastrophic feedback in our neural network. We must decline. We will remember your species with honor." One by one, the responses came. One by one, they all said no. The reasons were different, but the result was the same. The galaxy would not save the Villani. They would watch from a safe distance and do nothing. Thelnara walked through the capital city that evening. The streets were quiet. Everyone knew what was coming. Families held each other close. Artists created final works. Teachers told students goodbye. There was no panic, no riots. The Villani did not know how to be violent, even in their last days. She passed a park where children were playing. They laughed and chased each other, innocent and doomed. Thelnara wanted to scream at the injustice of it. These children had done nothing wrong. They had never hurt anyone. Why did the universe demand they die? Back in the council chamber, Thelnara sat at her console. She had one more message to send. It would be broadcast on all frequencies to every corner of space, to anyone who might be listening. She did not expect an answer, but she had to try. Her fingers moved across the controls. "This is Ambassador Thelnara of the Villani people. We are under attack. The Krasvoth swarm will reach our homeworld in 6 days. We have no defenses. We have asked for help, but no one will come. If anyone can hear this message, if anyone has the strength and the courage to help us, please respond. We are afraid. We are alone. And we are running out of time." She sent the message and sat back in her chair. Through the window, the stars looked cold and distant. The galaxy was so big, so full of life and wonder. But tonight it felt empty. Thelnara closed her eyes. She thought about her daughter, safe in a shelter below the city. She thought about her mate, already gone to the consuming sickness. She thought about her people, waiting for death with quiet dignity. The console made a soft sound. Thelnara opened her eyes. A new message was appearing on the screen. Her hearts began to beat faster. The signal was coming from... She checked the coordinates twice. It was coming from a region marked as Quarantine Zone 771. A region known for one thing: a planet classified as a Class 12 death world. The message was simple. The translation software struggled with the language, but the meaning was clear. Message received. Help is coming. Hold on. Thelnara stared at the screen. She did not know what a death world was. She did not know who these beings were, or why they lived in a quarantine zone. But they had answered. When the entire galaxy stayed silent, someone had responded. She typed a reply with shaking fingers. Thank you. We are here. We are waiting. For the first time in days, Thelnara felt something other than despair. She felt hope. It was small and fragile, but it was real. She stood and walked to the window. Somewhere out in that vast darkness, someone was coming. Someone who answered when no one else would. Someone who cared enough to help strangers they had never met. Thelnara did not know if they would arrive in time. She did not know if they could stop the Krasvoth. But she knew one thing. Her people would not die alone in silence. Someone had heard their plea. Someone was coming. The stars did not seem quite so cold anymore. Archon Velmoth stood in the Council Tower observation room, looking out at the stars. Behind him, his military advisors were arguing. They had been arguing for 3 hours now, ever since the junior officer brought the report. It makes no sense, General Kortval said, his voice tight with confusion. A single ship? From the quarantine zone? What could they possibly accomplish? Velmoth did not turn around. He had been alive for 800 years. He had seen civilizations rise and fall. He had witnessed wars, plagues, and cosmic disasters. He prided himself on understanding the galaxy and how it worked. But this made no sense to him either. Tell me again, he said quietly. Tell me about these humans. Priltova, the junior communications officer who had discovered the transmission, stepped forward nervously. She was young, only 40 years old, and she had never spoken directly to the Archon before. They come from a planet designated as Earth, she said, reading from her datapad. It is located in a remote spiral arm of the galaxy. Our survey teams discovered it 60 years ago during a standard mapping mission. The planet was classified as a Class 12 death world and marked for quarantine. Class 12, Kortval muttered. That's the highest danger rating. What makes it so dangerous? Priltova scrolled through the data. Everything, apparently. The planet has extreme temperature variations, violent weather patterns, aggressive microbial life, and predators at every level of the food chain. The survey team said it was one of the most hostile environments they had ever documented. They recommended no contact for at least 10,000 years. Velmoth finally turned from the window. And yet intelligent life evolved there? How is that possible? We don't fully understand, Priltova admitted. But the survey team observed them from orbit. The humans are a young species, barely achieving faster-than-light travel. They have only recently left their home system. According to the reports, they evolved through constant struggle. Everything on their planet tried to kill them, so they learned to fight back. Kortval laughed, but there was no humor in it. Fight back? Against what? Weather? Diseases? You cannot fight the environment. Apparently you can, Priltova said. The humans developed medicine to fight diseases. They built shelters to survive the weather. They created weapons to defend against predators. Their entire history is a story of overcoming impossible odds. Velmoth walked to the conference table and sat down heavily. He thought about his own people, the Thorians. They had evolved on a paradise world called Thoria Prime. It had perfect weather, abundant food, and no natural predators. The Thorians spent millions of years developing art, music, and philosophy. They had never needed to fight. They had never needed to struggle. When the Thorians finally developed space travel and met other species, they were horrified to learn that war existed. The concept of deliberately harming another being was alien to them. They had weapons now, yes, but only because they had learned from other species that the galaxy could be dangerous. Using those weapons, though? That was different. Show me the projection again, Velmoth said. Priltova activated the hologram. The Krasvoth swarm appeared in miniature above the table, a dark cloud of 17 million individual creatures. The simulation showed them reaching the Villani homeworld in 5 days now. Our analysts calculated what it would take to stop them, Priltova explained. We would need at least 50 capital ships, 500 support vessels, and approximately 200,000 soldiers. Even with that force, we would lose 20 to 30% of our troops. That's 40,000 to 60,000 Thorian deaths. Velmoth felt sick. 40,000 deaths. He could not imagine it, could not accept it. Each of those soldiers had families, friends, lovers. Each one was a unique individual who deserved to live a long, peaceful life. How could he order them to die? Our physiology is not designed for war, Cordval added. A single serious injury puts a Thorian into shock. Our survival rate after combat trauma is less than 15%. Even our survivors would suffer psychological damage that could never fully heal. The Crystalline Collective said the same thing. Another advisor said. Their silicon-based bodies are incredibly fragile. They live for thousands of years, but they can shatter from a strong impact. They cannot risk their people in combat. And the merged consciousness? Velmoth asked. They are a telepathic network, the advisor explained. If any of their individuals die violently, the trauma echoes through the entire collective. It could cause permanent damage to millions of minds. They simply cannot participate in warfare. Velmoth stood and paced the room. So we have the Villani, who will die if we do nothing. And we have ourselves, who will die if we try to help. Is there no other option? The room was silent. Velmoth knew the answer. He had known it from the beginning. This was the cruel mathematics of survival. Saving the Villani would cost more lives than it would save. From a logical standpoint, the decision was obvious, but logic did not make it feel any better. I have already sent the Villani our condolences, Velmoth said finally. I offered to preserve their cultural database, their art and history, so that they will be remembered. It is the best we can do. What about the human ship? Priltova asked. Should we contact them? Warn them that they are going to their deaths? Velmoth considered this. A single ship against 17 million Krasvoth. It was suicide. Those humans were doomed, but they had chosen to go anyway. No, Velmoth said. Do not contact them. If they wish to die trying to help strangers, that is their choice. We will not interfere. The meeting ended. The advisors filed out, leaving Velmoth alone in the observation room. He returned to the window and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, a ship full of humans was racing toward certain death. Velmoth wondered what kind of beings would make such a choice. What kind of species answered a distress call knowing they would not survive? He thought about the survey reports. A death world, they called it. A planet so dangerous that every day was a struggle to survive. Maybe that was the answer. Maybe when you spent your entire existence fighting for survival, you learned things that peaceful species never could. Maybe you learned courage, maybe you learned that some things were worth dying for. Velmoth felt a strange emotion, one he had rarely experienced in his 800 years of life. He felt ashamed. The Thorian Empire was powerful and advanced. They had technology and resources beyond imagination. And yet, when someone needed help, they had said no. Meanwhile, these humans from their terrible death world had said yes. Velmoth made a note to observe what happened in the Villani system. He suspected it would be over quickly. The humans would arrive, fight bravely, and die. The Krasvoth would then consume the Villani, and the galaxy would move on unchanged. But something in his heart hoped he was wrong. Something in him hoped that courage mattered more than probability. Captain Hyunwoo was drinking coffee when the distress signal came through. It was terrible coffee, the cheap freeze-dried kind that tasted like cardboard, but it was hot and it had caffeine. On a 3-month survey mission in deep space, you learn to appreciate small comforts. The signal interrupted his breakfast. The ship's computer chimed, indicating an incoming transmission on the emergency frequency. Hyunwoo set down his mug and walked to the bridge. His crew was already there. Yuna sat at the pilot's station, her fingers moving across the controls. Taeho stood by the engineering console, frowning at her readout. Ji-won was checking the medical bay inventory, and Dong-hyun was cleaning his rifle as he did every morning. Captain, Yuna said without looking up, we have a distress call. It's coming from pretty far away, multiple star systems distant. Hyunwoo settled into his command chair. Let's hear it. The translation software struggled with the alien language, but the message was clear enough. A species called the Villani was under attack. Something called the Krasvoth Swarm was going to reach their homeworld in 6 days. They needed help desperately. They had contacted every major power in the galaxy, and everyone had refused. When the message ended, the bridge was quiet. Hyunwoo looked at his crew. They were all thinking the same thing. "Show me what we know about the Krasvoth," he said. Taeho pulled up the data. What appeared on the screen made everyone stop and stare. The Krasvoth were bioweapons, creatures designed for war by a long-dead species. They reproduced fast, adapted to any environment, and consumed all organic matter. The swarm heading toward the Vellani numbered 17 million individual creatures. "Mother of God," Ji-won whispered. Yuna checked the navigation computer. "We're 6 days away at maximum burn. We would arrive just before the swarm does. If we go," Taeho added. "I mean, Captain, we're 5 people. They're talking about 17 million hostiles." Hyunwoo stood and walked to the view screen. He had joined the exploration service because he wanted to see the galaxy, to meet new species and discover new wonders. He had not signed up to fight wars. None of them had. But he had heard the message. He had heard the fear and desperation in that alien voice. Someone out there was going to die and they had asked for help. Everyone had said no, everyone except them. "I'm not going to order anyone to go," Hyunwoo said. "This is not our fight. These are not our people. If we go, we will probably die. So I'm putting it to a vote. Everyone gets a say." Dong-hyun spoke first. "I vote we go." He set down his rifle and looked at Hyunwoo. "My grandfather fought in the Unification Wars. He told me stories about what it meant to be a soldier. He said the uniform and the weapons don't make you a soldier. What makes you a soldier is being willing to stand between danger and innocent people, even when you're scared, especially when you're scared." He paused. "Those people are innocent. They're scared." "I vote we go," Ji-won nodded. "I became a medic to save lives. That's all I've ever wanted to do. If there's even a chance we can help, I have to try. I vote we go." Taeho sighed and rubbed his face. "I have a wife and 2 kids back on Earth. I think about them every day. I want to see them again." He looked up. "But I also want to live in a galaxy where people help each other, where we don't just stand by and watch innocents die because it's safer. If we don't go, I'll get home to my family, but I won't be able to look them in the eye. I vote we go." Yuna was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. "I always wanted to be a hero. Guess this is my chance. I vote we go." Hyunwoo felt pride swell in his chest. This was his crew. These were his people. Then it's unanimous. Change course. Maximum burn. And send a message to the Vellani. Tell them help is coming. The next 6 days were the longest of Hyunwoo's life. They spent every waking hour preparing. Taeho modified the ship's systems, boosting the weapons and creating improvised explosives. Ji-won studied Krasvoth biology, looking for weaknesses. Dong-hyun trained them all in close combat, running drills until their muscles screamed. Yuna planned attack vectors and escape routes, and Hyunwoo studied the intelligence reports, reading everything they had on the Krasvoth. The creatures were smart, adaptable, and relentless. They were designed to win, but every weapon had a weakness. Every enemy could be defeated. He just needed to find how. On the 5th day, Hyunwoo called a meeting. "The Krasvoth are predictable in one way," he said. "They always go for the largest food source first. They're driven by hunger above all else. So they'll attack the homeworld first," Yuna said, "where the most Vellani are gathered." "Exactly. But what if we give them a bigger target?" Hyunwoo pulled up a display. "What if we make the Krasvoth think we're carrying thousands of Vellani refugees?" Taeho caught on immediately. "We rig the ship to emit a false biological signature. Make them think we're loaded with food. And we lead them into a trap," Hyunwoo finished. "There's a gas giant in the Vellani system. If we detonate our plasma core in the upper atmosphere, the explosion will ignite the gases. The pressure wave could destroy a large portion of the swarm, and we evacuate in the shuttle before the core blows," Yuna said. "It's risky, but it could work." "It will leave us stranded," Ji-won pointed out. "No ship, limited supplies, and whatever Krasvoth survive will still be hunting us." Dong-hyun checked his rifle. "Then we fight them on the ground, one at a time if we have to." They arrived in the Vellani system 5 hours before the Krasvoth vanguard. Hyunwoo made contact with Ambassador Thelnara. Seeing her on the view screen, he understood why they had come. She looked so fragile, so afraid, so hopeful. "Captain Hyunwoo," she said, "I cannot express our gratitude. You came when no one else would. We're here to help, Yunwu said, but I need you to trust me. What I'm about to do might seem crazy, Telnara smiled weakly. Captain, you traveled 6 days across space to fight 17 million monsters with 5 people. I think crazy is relative at this point. Yunwu laughed despite the tension. Fair point. All right, here's the plan. He explained everything. Telnara listened in silence, her eyes growing wider. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. You're going to destroy your only ship? She asked. To save your people? Yes, but then you will be trapped here. If you fail, you will die with us. Yunwu met her gaze through the screen. Then we better not fail. The Krasvoth arrived like a black storm, blotting out the stars. Hyunwoo watched them on the sensors and felt his heart pound. 17 million nightmares, all hungry, all coming. Taeho, activate the false signature, he ordered. The ship's systems hummed. To the Krasvoth sensors, the Valor's reach now looked like it carried thousands of Villani. The swarm hesitated, then changed course. They were taking the bait. Yuna, get us to that gas giant. Nice and slow. Let them follow. Yuna's hands were steady on the controls. Aye, Captain. Setting course. The Krasvoth chased them into the gas giant's atmosphere, millions of creatures following blindly, driven by hunger. Hyunwoo waited until they were deep enough, until the pressure was right. Now, he shouted. Everyone to the shuttle, they ran. The ship shook as the Krasvoth began attaching to the hull. Hyunwoo was the last one into the shuttle, sealing the hatch behind him. Yuna fired the engines, pulling away from the doomed ship. Taeho, detonate, Hyunwoo ordered. Taeho pressed the button. The Valor's reach exploded, and the gas giant's atmosphere ignited. The fireball was visible from space, a miniature sun born from sacrifice. When it faded, 12 million Krasvoth were dead. 5 million remained. Hyunwoo looked at his crew. They were battered, scared, but alive, and the fight was just beginning. All right, he said. Round 2. Let's go save some people. The remaining 5 million Krasvoth descended on the Villani homeworld like a plague. Hyunwoo watched from the shuttle as the black wave fell from the sky, spreading across the planet's surface. They had bought time with their sacrifice, but time was not enough. The Krasvoth were still too many. Captain, we need a plan, Yuna said from the pilot's seat. Her voice was steady, but Hyunwoo could hear the fear underneath. He looked at his crew. 4 people who had volunteered to die for strangers. 4 people who were now trapped on an alien world with millions of bioweapons hunting them. Hyunwoo had led them here, and he would get them through this or die trying. Take us down to the capital city, he said. That's where the Villani are concentrated. That's where the Krasvoth will go first. The shuttle dropped through the atmosphere. Below them, the Villani capital spread across a beautiful coastline, all crystal towers and flowing water. It would have been breathtaking under other circumstances. Now it just looked vulnerable. Telnara met them at the landing pad. Behind her, Villani citizens were evacuating to underground shelters. They moved in orderly lines, helping the young and the old. No pushing or panic. Even facing extinction, they maintained their dignity. Captain, Telnara said, the shelters will not hold for long. The Krasvoth can dig through almost anything given time. Then we don't give them time, Hyunwoo replied. He turned to his crew. Gear up, combat loadout. We're going hunting. They suited up in their armor, checking weapons and ammunition. The Villani watched in fascination and confusion. They had never seen soldiers before, had never witnessed preparations for war. What are those? A young Villani asked, pointing at Donghyun's rifle. This is a weapon, Donghyun explained. It's designed to kill. The child backed away, frightened. His parent pulled him close. Jiwon knelt down to the child's level. We're here to protect you, she said gently. These weapons are scary, but they keep bad things away. You don't need to be afraid of us. But you're so small, the parent said. Only 5 of you. How can you stop millions? Hyunwoo checked his rifle and smiled. Because we're humans, and humans are really, really good at surviving impossible odds. The first Krasvoth reached the city an hour later. They came through the streets like a flood of claws and teeth, destroying everything they touched. The creatures were the size of large dogs with armored shells and multiple sets of jaws. They moved fast and killed faster. Hyunwoo and his team positioned themselves at the main entrance to the shelter district. It was a wide plaza surrounded by buildings, a natural choke point. This is where we make our stand, Hyunwoo said. Taeho, what can we use? Taeho surveyed the area. His engineer's mind saw possibilities everywhere. Those buildings are mostly empty. We can collapse them to create barriers. That fountain in the center has a water system we can rupture. make the ground slippery. And those decorative crystals the Villani use for lighting, they're highly flammable. Do it, Hyunwoo ordered. Yuna, you're our eyes. Get to high ground and coordinate. Call out targets and warn us of flanking attempts. Jiwon, I need you working with the Villani scientists. Find a weakness in Krasvoth biology, something we can exploit. What about me? Donghyun asked. Hyunwoo loaded his rifle. You and I are going to kill everything that tries to get through. The Krasvoth came in waves. Hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands. They filled the plaza, climbing over each other to reach the humans. Hyunwoo and Donghyun opened fire. The humans fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They moved with speed and precision, every shot calculated, every movement purposeful. They used the environment as a weapon. When Taeho collapsed a building, it crushed hundreds of Krasvoth. When they ignited the flammable crystals, the resulting fire consumed thousands more. But the Krasvoth kept coming. Hyunwoo's armor took hits, denting and cracking. His rifle ran hot from constant firing. His muscles screamed with exhaustion. He ignored it all. The moment he stopped, the moment he hesitated, the Krasvoth would break through. And behind him were millions of Villani who could not fight for themselves. Yuna's voice crackled over the comm. Captain, 3 groups trying to flank from the east. Approximately 500 each. I'm on it, Taeho replied. He triggered the explosives he had placed and entire streets collapsed, burying the flanking groups. Hours passed. The sun set and they fought in darkness, illuminated only by fire and muzzle flashes. Hyunwoo lost count of how many Krasvoth he killed. His world narrowed to target acquisition and trigger pulls. Aim, fire, move, repeat. Captain, I'm down to my last magazine, Donghyun called out. Same here, Hyunwoo replied. Switched to close combat, they drew their blades. The fighting became intimate and brutal. Hyunwoo moved through the Krasvoth like a dancer, cutting and stabbing, using their own momentum against them. His armor was covered in their blood, his blade chipped and worn. This was what humans were designed for. Not peace, not philosophy, but survival. 10,000 years of evolution, of fighting predators and diseases and each other, had made them into perfect warriors. They could endure pain that would kill other species. They could fight for hours without rest. They could face impossible odds and refuse to quit, because humans did not evolve in paradise. They evolved in hell, and hell made them strong. I found something. Ji-won's voice cut through the chaos. Captain, the Krasvoth adapt to threats, right? They evolve fast to counter whatever kills them. But I realized something. What if we make them evolve in the wrong direction? Explain faster. Hyunwoo grunted, kicking a Krasvoth off his leg. I worked with the Villani scientist to create a toxin. It targets the Krasvoth's adaptive genes. Each generation that survives exposure becomes more vulnerable to the toxin, not less. We turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. How do we deliver it? Hyunwoo asked. The water system. It runs throughout the city. We introduce the toxin into the main reservoir and it spreads everywhere. Do it, Hyunwoo ordered. Taeho, help her. Everyone else, we hold this position until the toxin takes effect. The next hour was the longest of Hyunwoo's life. They fought with everything they had. Donghyun broke his blade and started using his bare hands. Yuna abandoned her sniper position and joined the melee, firing at point-blank range. Hyunwoo felt ribs crack when a Krasvoth slammed into him, but he kept fighting. Then slowly the Krasvoth began to weaken. The toxin was spreading through their systems, through their generations. The creatures that had been nearly unstoppable hours ago were now sluggish, vulnerable. It's working, Ji-won shouted. The humans pressed their advantage. They pushed forward, reclaiming the plaza, then the streets beyond. The Krasvoth tried to retreat, but there was nowhere to go. The toxin had infiltrated the entire swarm. By dawn, it was over. The last Krasvoth fell, and silence descended on the city. Hyunwoo stood in the center of the plaza, surrounded by alien corpses covered in blood and exhaustion. His crew gathered around him, battered but alive. Thelnara emerged from the shelter, followed by thousands of Villani. They stared at the carnage in disbelief. 5 humans had held off an army. 5 strangers had saved an entire species. Hyunwoo removed his helmet. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds, his face was pale, and he was swaying on his feet. But he smiled. Ambassador, he said, I'm sorry we took so long. Thelnara did not speak. She could not find words. She simply bowed, and every Villani in the city bowed with her. Ji-won immediately went to work treating wounds. Taeho collapsed against a wall, finally allowing himself to feel his exhaustion. Yuna sat down on a pile of rubble and laughed. Pure relief and disbelief. Dong-hyun cleaned his blade and looked at Hyun-woo. "Captain, remind me never to volunteer for anything ever again." Hyun-woo laughed, then winced at the pain in his ribs. Deal, they had done it. Against all odds, against all logic, 5 humans had saved an entire world. Not because they were stronger or smarter than other species. Not because they had better technology or superior numbers. They won because they refused to quit. Because when everyone else said no, they said yes. Because that was what humans did. News of the Villani rescue spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within days, every major civilization had heard the story. 5 humans in a single ship had achieved what no one thought possible. They had destroyed the Krasvoth swarm and saved an entire species from extinction. In the council tower, Archon Velmoth stood before a view screen displaying the combat footage. The Villani had recorded everything and they had shared it with the galaxy. Velmoth watched in silence as the humans fought for 18 straight hours, refusing to retreat, refusing to surrender. "Replay the section at timestamp 43 minutes, Velmoth said quietly. The hologram showed Captain Hyun-woo with a broken rib, bleeding from multiple wounds, still fighting. A Krasvoth had grabbed his leg, trying to pull him down. Instead of panicking, the human simply shot it point blank, then continued moving forward. "Pause there," Velmoth said. He stared at the frozen image. "His armor is breached. His biological readings show multiple injuries that would put a Thorian into fatal shock. But he keeps fighting. How?" Priltova stood beside him, also watching the footage. She had not slept in 2 days, too fascinated by what she was seeing. "They evolved to endure, Archon. Their bodies can survive damage that would kill us. Their minds can process trauma without breaking. They are built for war." "No," Velmoth said softly. "They are built for survival. There is a difference." He walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful stars. "I have been thinking about Deathworlds. We called Earth that because it seemed too dangerous to approach. We assumed any species that evolved there would be primitive or savage. We were wrong." Velmoth turned back to Priltova. "The humans are not savage. They are compassionate. They did not have to help the Villani. They gained nothing from it except danger. But they went anyway because they understood what it meant to be afraid and alone. They understood because their entire history has been about fighting to survive." "What are you saying, Archon?" Priltova asked. "I am saying that we evolved in paradise and it made us weak. Not physically weak, but morally weak. When faced with difficult choices, we choose safety over courage. We choose survival over sacrifice." He gestured to the view screen. "But the humans evolved in hell and it made them strong in ways we never imagined." The council called an emergency session. Representatives from every major civilization gathered to discuss the implications. What did it mean that 5 humans could do what their combined militaries would not attempt? Velmoth addressed the assembly. "We have witnessed something unprecedented. A species from a quarantined death world has demonstrated capabilities far beyond our projections. But more importantly, they have demonstrated something we seem to have lost: the willingness to help others at great personal cost." "Are you suggesting we were wrong to refuse the Villani's request?" A crystalline collective representative asked. "I am saying our refusal was logical but shameful," Velmoth replied. "We calculated costs and benefits. We prioritized our own survival, and we were willing to watch an entire species die because saving them was inconvenient." The chamber erupted in protests, but Velmoth raised his hand for silence. "I am not finished. I propose that we extend an invitation to humanity. We offer them council membership, access to our technology, and full diplomatic relations. Is that wise?" Another representative questioned. "They come from a death world. They are warriors. What if they turn their violence against us?" "Then we will deserve it," Velmoth said bluntly. "But I do not believe they will." The humans could have demanded payment from the Villani. They could have used their victory to gain power. Instead, they asked for nothing. They helped because it was the right thing to do. The vote was close, but it passed. A delegation would be sent to Earth with an official invitation. 3 weeks later, Ambassador Mi Ray stood in the council chambers. She was young, only 40 years old, with kind eyes and a diplomatic smile. Behind her stood Captain Hyun-woo and his crew, still recovering from their injuries but standing tall in their formal uniforms. Velmoth presented the invitation personally. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, we offer humanity full membership in our alliance. We offer access to our knowledge, our technology, and our trade networks. We hope to build a lasting friendship between our peoples. Mireille listened politely, then smiled. We appreciate the offer, Archon Velmoth. We truly do, but we must respectfully decline most of it. The chamber fell silent. Velmoth blinked in confusion. Decline, but this is a great honor. Why would you refuse? Because we don't need it, Mireille said gently. Your technology is impressive, but we are developing our own. Your knowledge is vast, but we are learning. What we need is not resources or power. What we need is already on Earth. Challenges that make us stronger. Struggles that teach us compassion and the freedom to find our own way. She stepped forward. But there is one thing we would like from you. When you receive a distress call and you are too afraid to answer it, send it to us. We will go. We cannot promise we will always succeed, but we promise we will always try. Velmoth felt something break inside him. It might have been pride or shame or perhaps both. Your species shames us, he admitted. Mireille's expression softened. That is not our intention. We do not judge you for choosing safety. Every species has the right to protect themselves. But we also believe that some things are worth the risk. Helping others is one of them. She paused, then added, We remember what it is like to be afraid and alone. Humanity has faced extinction many times in our history. We know the terror of thinking no one will help. We would not wish that feeling on anyone. The council session ended with mixed emotions. Some representatives felt relief that humanity was not demanding power. Others felt uncomfortable with the implication that they had failed some moral test. But all of them understood that something had changed in the galaxy. Back in the Villani system, Thelnara stood before a newly constructed monument. It was made of the finest crystal gleaming in the sunlight. 5 names were carved into its surface in both Villani and human languages: Hyunwoo, Yuna, Taiho, Jiwan, and Donghyun. Below the names was an inscription. When the galaxy looked away, they looked back. When the void was silent, they answered, They are called humans. They are called friends. Thousands of Villani gathered for the dedication ceremony. Children left flowers at the monument's base. Artists created murals depicting the battle. Teachers told the story to students, ensuring that future generations would remember. Hyunwoo stood at the back of the crowd, uncomfortable with the attention. He had not done anything special in his mind. He had simply helped people who needed help. That was what anyone should do. Thelnara found him after the ceremony. Captain, I want to thank you again, not just for saving us, but for showing us that courage still exists in this galaxy. You don't need to thank me, Hyunwoo said. We were just doing what was right. That is exactly why we must thank you, Thelnara replied. Because you believe that doing the right thing needs no thanks. Because you helped us expecting nothing in return. That kind of selflessness is rare, Captain. Perhaps it only comes from species that have known true hardship. Hyunwoo thought about Earth, his home. He thought about humanity's long history of wars, plagues, famines, and disasters. Every generation had faced some kind of crisis. Every generation had survived by working together, by refusing to give up, by helping each other through the darkness. Maybe that was humanity's real strength. Not their ability to fight, but their refusal to let others suffer alone. The Valor's reach was gone, destroyed in the gas giant. But the Villani had built them a new ship, better than the one they lost. It was a gift, they said, though it could never repay the debt they owed. As Hyunwoo and his crew prepared to leave, the entire planet gathered to say goodbye. They had become heroes here, legends that would be told for generations. What will you do now? Thelnara asked. Hyunwoo looked at his crew. They were tired, scarred, and changed by what they had experienced. But they were also smiling. We'll go back to our survey mission, he said. We'll explore the galaxy, meet new species, discover new wonders. But we'll keep our comms open, just in case someone needs help. And if another distress call comes? Thelnara asked. Hyunwoo thought about it for a moment, then smiled. Then I guess we'll answer it. Because that's what humans do. The new ship launched, rising into the sky and leaving the Villani homeworld behind. But the connection between the two species would never be broken. Humanity had made their first true alien friend, and they had done it the only way they knew how. By being themselves. In the depths of space, there were other species facing other dangers, other distress calls that would go unanswered, other silent pleas into the void. But now there was one species that would always respond. One species that understood that courage meant showing up when everyone else stayed home. One species that proved that sometimes the most dangerous beings in the galaxy were also the kindest. They were called humans, and they were ready to help.